Big Raga, what a time to have you back. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. In fact, I do mean to have it on and keep it on me. And another one fact, I have 15 minutes to tell you how I feel about Mahoraga's implementation specifically in Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo. So far. He's not obviously done yet. Seemingly, we didn't even get to see the second half, what seems to be probably the second half of this fight, but I do want to talk about Mahoraga's appearance here, what it means, how I feel about it, and what it could mean, whether or not he wins or loses the battle against Dabura, whether it gets third party, this, that, and the third. So let's not waste more time. Let me start this 50-minute timer if I can find the timer right now. Please, give me the timer, let's go! Alright, so, Mahoraga's here again. Now, obviously, Mahoraga is a fan favorite to end literally all fan favorites. I don't think there's a single person who actively, well, that's a lie. I was about to say, I don't think there's a single person who actively dislikes Mahoraga. Incorrect. There are a couple people who do, mainly because of his narrative role in the original series, but Mahoraga's appearance, specifically within the context of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, or Modulo, I'm not sure. I've heard both. I usually say Modulo, but now I'm saying Modulo. 50-50, depends on the moment and the instant. But Mahoraga appearing, the 8-handled divine seal of divergent General Mahoraga, is interesting on two fronts. Here's the most base front, the most regular front, the most front that you kind of expected from your boy. It's cool, alright? Mahoraga is one of the best designs in all of JJK. So yeah, I'm happy to have him back. Like, what do you want from me? He's a real cool guy who does real cool things, even though he's realistically 9 out of 10 times a punch kick merchant, when you think about it. He barely does any damage to anybody with that sword. Like, he tickles people with the sword. That's actually kind of funny. We'll talk about Mahoraga's flaws another time, though. But, with that being the case, Mahoraga's appearance narratively is the main thing I want to dedicate this to. And why I think it's a really, really cool implementation of Mahoraga as a narrative tool, specifically against his opponent in Big Dabura, and very specifically in regards to the entire conflict of the Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, the nature of the extraterrestrial versus Earthlings, and what it means for Mahoraga specifically to be the quote-unquote chosen fighter alongside Yuka Okotsu against Dabura in the duel for Tokyo. And kind of the world, but mainly Tokyo. So, why do I think Mahoraga works so well as the battle piece here? The maintenance, the last bastion of defense for humanity? It's because I think Mahoraga is humanity. I mentioned this before in some videos, but let me iterate my idea again. Mahoraga is still a part of the 10 Shadows technique. In fact, it is the apex of the 10 Shadows technique. What is uniform about the 10 Shadows technique? Every single one of the shadows is an animal of some sort. From divine dogs, to rabbit escape, to the frogs, to Nue, even though Nue is a weird kind of bird, it's still a bird. Max elephant, this, that, and the third. You can go down the entire line from things we haven't seen like Morning Tiger to things we've seen all the time, or realistically only also once, Piercing Bull. But a lot of people, myself included for a little bit, we're a little bit confused on the fact that Mahoraga, exists, considering Mahoraga isn't the most conventional animal out there. But the main thing I think Mahoraga represents now, after a lot of reflection and just thinking about it a little bit, Mahoraga's a human, right? Like I think even though he's referenced as the divergent seal of divine general, he's a human. He's a dude. Like, literally just look at him, he's a dude. And also, he is a human, because humans, at the end of the day, are still animals. And I think that's why Mahoraga is one of the Shikigami with the most personality, with the most human-like appearance, why he stands at the apex of the 10 Shadows, because ultimately, what is more human than a guy? And what is more animal than a guy? Nothing, because we're just guys. So of course, the guy that is the living embodiment of the 10 Shadows technique, the apex of it, is going to be the one to fight against Dabura. Specifically, at the cost of Yuka Okotsu. I think that's the most important part here. It'd be one thing if Mahoraga was just here and it was tamed, right? In a very similar vein to how it's used more as a tool against Sukuna and not the primary fighting force, or not against Sukuna, but a tool against Gojo, not necessarily the primary fighting force, where the primary fighting force is Sukuna against Gojo. With this being a wild Mahoraga, Mahoraga basically is doing the battling for Dabura. Yuka's already in a suspended state of death. She's not really in the battle, so essentially Mahoraga's appearance here is a sacrifice. A human sacrifice for another human to take down a threat that is extraterrestrial. So, let's tie this back into the narrative. What is currently the plot? Oh, yeah, there's the whole conflict between both the Simurians and the humans on whether or not the Simurians should be allowed to stay here, be allowed to live, be allowed to take Tokyo, be allowed to exist in a way alongside humanity. That is the core focal point of the other major battle, Moru versus Tsurugi, all happening at the same time as Mahoraga versus Dabura. So why does Mahoraga work so well? Because he is a human fighting for humanity at the cost of another human. Think about how typically sacrifice works. In order to gain something, you must give something. Humanity has given Yuka Okotsu up to Dabura in order to summon Mahoraga to defeat Dabura. And the reason I think this works so well, especially so far, I don't know how this battle's going to go. I'll talk about the hypothetical endpoint of the battle and what that could mean for the whole overall narrative and thematic reasoning behind Mahoraga's implementation here. But very specifically, what I love about the battle so far is how it sort of further feeds into the idea of Mahoraga being human. Mahoraga is kinda not, I don't want to say he's doing nothing, but like, he never damages Dabura. He gets one hit on him, which does send him flying back. Or actually, no, it's two hits. It's this double overhead right here, so he does tag him, and he does kick him back, but it does genuinely zero damage to Dabura. There's not a lick of RCT steam here. He's perfectly fine, and then Dabura goes to viciously and violently annihilate this guy, as he was viciously and violently annihilating the guy the second he spawned in with all these light beams. So, what is this meant to tell us narratively? Oh, humanity, especially currently as it stands now within Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, without Yuji Itadori being there, who has transcended humanity of himself, isn't able to stand up to Dabura, isn't able to stand up to the strongest of the heavens. Why? Because the heavens transcend humanity, in a sense. However, I want you to also know something about how Mahoraga is being used. He's being used. AKA, he's still here. He lived everything that Dabura had to throw at him so far. Dabura is shown to, unironically, at this point, he's like top, I want to say 3. He's probably just the 3rd strongest character in the verse, behind Gojo and Sukuna themselves, and that's just me holding out hopium and copium on Gojo and Sukuna's part, because this man Dabura is moving menacingly with light itself. And a whole other second curse technique. There are, well, I'd say but there kind of is hot debate on whether or not this is a physical manifestation of hard light, which is what I think it is. Other people think this could be the second unnameable technique that Dabura simply cannot, or the narrator simply couldn't translate because it's specifically of the Deskunte tribe. So, there is that dangerous, devious, and diabolical factor that Mahoraga is just perfectly outmatched. It can't do anything, but it's not giving up. And it's continuously adapting. The wheel keeps on spinning. Humanity, despite being weaker than what the stars has to offer, is still able to adapt to it, still able to grow to it. I think many have heard the idea that we were promised the stars, and there's no clearer example of this than Mahoraga and its continued existence in this battle. So, with that being the case, if Mahoraga is representing humanity in the general scheme, if Mahoraga is meant to feed into the idea of the sacrificing of humanity in order to bolster the rest of humanity by being the essential result of Yuka sacrificing herself to fight Dabura, and Mahoraga is still here fighting Dabura and not necessarily doing any damage just yet, what do I think the end result of the battle should be to try and fit into the overall dynamics that have been established in this fight, in the dynamics that have been established between the humans and the Simurians, in the dynamics of the overarching narrative that Gege is going for? If I had to be honest, I don't think either side should win. And you may be like, I don't know if you know this, Pencil Man, but this is a battle. In a battle manga, someone typically has to win. And of course, Mahoraga isn't a someone. It's a human in like the thematic and Ten Shadow sense, but it's not actually a dude. But there are reasons why I think Mahoraga shouldn't win and ultimately Dabura shouldn't win either. The main reason is because the battle for humanity versus the Simurians shouldn't really be a battle that's happening at all. The reason I think this battle is happening at the exact same time as Moru versus Tsurugi is because this is meant to display to us that this battle is not a good thing. It's not a good thing. And unlike previous battles, which did definitely have thematic implementations that definitely did necessarily desire a winner and a loser, definitively, I don't think there should really be a winner and a loser scenario in between the battle of humans and Simurians. And why do I think that? Because ultimately they're all people. The big difference between this battle and a battle between someone like Yuji and Mahito is the fact that Dabura is a person. Jabaloma is a person. Maru, Cross, they are all living, breathing people. just as Tsurugi, Yuka, Mino, Usami, they're all living people. All of humanity, all of the submarines, they're all people. And I don't think Gege would want to push the message of either side just dominating the other and winning. I think it's important to show humanity's resilience and ability to keep moving forward in the face of impossible odds, which is what Mahoraga is doing by consistently surviving and regenerating everything that Dabra has to offer him, and barely pressing him just a little bit. But at the same time, I don't think that Mahoraga should overcome Dabura. A big thing I've seen a lot of people really want for Mahoraga in this fight specifically is for him to finally get like an actual dub by himself. When you think about it, when in terms of Mahoraga's victories, the only one he actually gets on screen is against Shirozu after Sukuna did a majority adaptation for him, and that's it. He loses to Gojo, like literally gets annihilated along with the rest of the 10 Shadows technique. He loses to Suguna back in Shibuya, and he does off-screen, presumably multiple 10 Shadows users prior, and especially the one from 400 years ago, which will now be about 500 years ago in the times of Modulo. So, ultimately, I still don't think Mahoraga should win, but I don't think Mahoraga should lose either. I think there should be an intervening third party that brings this battle to a close. Now, I know a lot of people are going to hear that and be like, Pencilman, you're just looking for a cop-out because you don't want either of these two top-tier characters to be proven fraudulent. No, not necessarily, because losing a fight does not make one fraudulent. If losing a fight made one fraudulent, Gojo would be fraudulent, and that's not how that works. What does matter here, though, in particular, the reason why I think there should be a third party, is actually the intervening factor of the sacrifice itself. I think it wouldn't be, like, a bad narrative choice. Like, I wouldn't say it's the worst thing ever, and I'd have to reach into the heavens and grab Gege by the throat and shake them aggressively, but, like, I don't think Yuka should die. But realize, if Dabura wins and annihilates all of Mahoraga, Yuka dies. And if Mahoraga wins and annihilates Dabura, Yuka dies. So, that's kind of not bueno. So we kind of do need a third party of sorts to come and end this battle. Now, naturally, okay, you want a third party to end this battle, but what does that mean thematically, right? If we're talking not so much about, just the cool aspects of Mahoraga doing the big fight thing against the big other strong fight man, how is a third party interfering and neutralizing the ritual or invalidating it? How would that fit in thematically? How would that fit into the idea of humans and Samorians needing to come together and work together to understand each other, which I presume, and literally I am just presuming, that is the overarching idea of Modulo. I think it works depending on who does it, and we have two options. Naturally, there is the idea that Yuji Itadori could come and intervene in this battle at any moment, right? Obviously, in this instance, Chapter 17, we find out that he does, at least know of the current weaker state of the Jujutsu world, and says it doesn't matter, or in apparently the original text he says, I don't care. But the reason I think that's fine, and he could still show up here, is because this is a battle that sort of transcends humanity. And him showing up would be a really interesting callback and an interesting thematic filling role from to parallel Shibuya Sukuna, who came in third party battle between Mahoraga and Haruta. Another different kind of thing that will probably get its own video because I'm running out of time. But with that being the case, Yuji could do it, and so could Mahito. Why? Because Mahito in his own way represents humanity in a very similar way to Mahoraga. Once again, in that transcendental sense, where Mahito's more so a aspect / reflection of humanity that could appear in third party, or vice versa. The reason that I would prefer it to be Yuji is because you can still get the thematic element of something greater than humanity, yet tied to humanity, coming in and allowing for a bond between something from the heavens and something from Earth. You could have that, meeting point. But at the same time, Mahito hasn't shown up in, a lot of chapters. At least Yuji got an appearance in Chapter 17. Mahito hasn't shown up since that Tsurugi dream a while ago, and he still technically does need to be resolved again. So, those are the two options. Mahoraga works thematically because he represents humanity, and he is the forefront and the idea and the manifestation of sacrifice of some humanity for the greater concept of humanity. I don't think he should win, because I don't think the idea of humanity giving up on other sentient living creatures is going to be the overall thematic message of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo. I think it needs to be some form of compromise. So Mahoraga being invalidated, the ritual, the sacrifice itself being invalidated, and Yuka being saved, and Dabura himself not dying, leading to a neutralization, a endpoint to the clash, without anyone actually perishing would work. It would also feed into this battle's other smaller scale parallel in Maru versus Tsurugi, where ultimately neither of these two combatants actually do want to slaughter the other, but are fighting for the sake of their beliefs. And I ultimately think their battle as well should that's another time for another video, but essentially I believe their battle should parallel the end of the Mahoraga versus Dabura battle as well, where there should be a third party, or at least the two could, because technically there already is a third party, because Ricky messed it up, but we can still talk about that in a separate video, which I will. But I think Maru versus Tsurugi should end in the same way that Mahoraga versus Dabura should. A third party should intervene, cancel the two out, and allow for some sort of reconciliation and compromise, rather than the deaths of either character involved. In the case of Mahoraga versus Dabura, literally all three. Because Yuka's here too, she's just, in a suspended state of death. I don't think any of these characters should die. I think this should be a literal physical, in terms of battle manga being used as a means for storytelling. This should be a physical representation of the idea that conflict is not a way to resolve every single problem, and just slaughtering what you don't like isn't necessarily the way to go. Rather, there should be some sort of compromise. Obviously, that means Mahoraga is going to lose, quote unquote, because he's going to be despawned. But at the same time, he won't lose as he's going to get another L on his record. He's just going to be resolved, in a sense. But, of course, I am now out of time, so I want to thank you so much for watching. If you made stop it! Good. If you've been all the way in this sorry about that. If you've been all the way in this video, please do me a favor and leave the human animal. There we go. Fat brains. Leave the human animal in the comment section down below. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure that link to notification bell so you not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, you can have a Patreon down below. You can support me for as low as $1 a month. You can see exclusive videos, early content, and more. You'll also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks include the live reactions to every series I have to review, including series like Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo. You can get all the live reactions to all the chapters released to this point, and any chapters that are released in the future. On top of that, you get early ad-free access to all videos on this channel and all videos on the second channel, That Guy with the Reaction, where I drop at 1 p.m. EST, I drop like 2 hour to 45 minute or inverse that reaction videos literally every single Saturday at 1 p.m. EST. Then on top of that, you get your name listed at the end of every single video. If you're a $3 member or higher, you get your name listed and read aloud at the end of every single video. And on top of that, there is the Ko-Fi link down below if you want to drop 5 beats or a short video or 20 beats or a long video. Any beats at all, any support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our sketch tier members: Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, Astro, Glacier XZ, Zera, J2MA, Guillaume, Pura Ura, Enzo, Yuki Ally, Grim, Ollie, The Boy, Corey Watson, Damon Brown, Magic, CCC, Romano Fiore, Dino, Hector Gonzalez, Tim Thomas, Kaving, Julian Perez, RXN, Nevis97, Logan Guzman, Dead Meme, Karu Deer, Christian Carter, Keon Stewart, Donovan McIntosh, Sino King, Hamza Idrisi, BNA DNA, Edwin Igbinoba, Straw, Athenzi Shear, Antavius Mitchell, Azo2404, Superflame Zero, Weary Exile, Karina Hernandez, Sheesh King, Window Life, Alex Kenny, Victor Jacobs, Todd, Dre, Axis XC, The Practical One, Aswin Hedi Presetia, JMD KD, Devi Pesiet, Landon Clapwick, Heath Nelson, CAET, Funny Dude, Jagoda, Plant Crone, Striker Man, Brandon Payne, Black Sage, and Multi-Batman Superman. Then I'll leave a thank you to Artline Art Tier patrons: A+A, Kevin Encarnacion, Sean, Dread Zoen, Midnight Lord 21, CJ, and Karina Hernandez. Then I'll leave a thank you to our Ink Tier members: King RTX, Shrimpo the 4th Shrimp 06, and Zom. Then I'll give a thank you to our digital art tier members: J Warrior and AZ Void. And I'd like to give a final thank you to our colored art tier patrons: Walking Munoz and Walkie Munoz.